Welcome to the Rising Consciousness Show, 20 minutes of soulful insights and powerful tools to elevate your life experience and create with higher clarity, intention, and vision. I'm Tara Antler, intuitive healer and soul coach.
And I'm King Gabriel, spiritual teacher and practitioner. And we are the co-founders of Ascension Academy of Life,
a global center for spiritual growth, intuitive healing, and soul alignment.
Get ready to blast off.
All right. Well, I am so excited to be here with a special guest today, someone who has been on the show before and someone who I get to call friend because she's such a soul sister. And we've had so many amazing conversations behind closed doors about all sorts of things, from pregnancy to business to spirituality to our intuition to getting happy. And this is what we really want to talk about today, is the energy of happiness and bringing happiness into your world, that it can be a constant state. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you could potentially do that. So Christina Whiteley, I am so grateful that you are here with me again. Can you let everybody know a little bit about you, your world? She just had a baby as well, and she looks phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Tara. I appreciate our conversation so much. You know, there are very few people in this world that are, number one, as gifted as you, but number two, that I hold so dear, in that, you know, you can go to with good news, bad news, and different news, and just have a solid friend to have a conversation with. You know, I have so much respect for you and Gabriel and what you guys are doing for your incredible community. It's an honor for me to be here today. You know, if my life has been very interesting over the last few years, but I was a small town girl. I grew up with blue collar parents. I thought that happiness was getting a job that could pay the bills. And then, you know, the whole thing, like, you meet a nice guy, you have some kids with a white picket fence, and you live out your days till you're happily retired. And that's what life is. Unfortunately for me, that sounded more like a death sentence than something that I really wanted to strive for, right? I always had this intuition that I was made for more, that I was made to give back, that I was made to serve. And there's this incessant need, and whether, you know, you call it intuition or Holy Spirit or your energy, your frequency, all of that leads you to a place, if you honor it, of this beautiful intentional flow. And so a couple of years back, in the midst of COVID, I was not in a good place. I'd done 20 plus years of personal development. I was coaching entrepreneurs. I had a very successful business, but I had a couple of miscarriages that put me in a depressive state. And not only that, but like, what the heck was going on during COVID? You know, it was awful. And I saw it for what it was. And I know you're very open and honest with your community, and I can be open and honest here, but I saw it for what it was. And I was like, what? How do people not see this? This is absurd. And so that really did a number on my mindset, on how I felt on a daily basis. I had really bad anxiety. I hit my rock bottom. I was standing in my mom's backyard. I'll never forget this, in my hometown. My sister had just had a baby. We had just been to Ryan's brother's wedding. We had all of these things to be happy for. And I was beside myself. I was bawling uncontrollably and was just like, I am not okay. I said those words, I am not okay. And I don't know how to fix this. And my mom just looked at me in disbelief. She's like, you're the strong one. You're the one who has the answers for everything. And like, how can you not be okay? And so it was kind of then that I realized, even though we had carved out this path that we were, you know, working with intention and moving forward, that I still, underlying in my subconscious, was making decisions that were based on what was best for everyone around me, and not based on what was best for me and for my immediate family, which means my husband and my children. I had a child at that time, just one. And it's really funny because every time I talked about having kids, I always said kids plural, right? We talked about this. And by the way, I have to tell you, like, side note, Tara reached out to me when I didn't even know I was pregnant. And she's like, Christina, I just had to message you. I saw a video of you and there was just this energy about you. She's like, are you pregnant? And I was like, no, but we're trying. I'm like, how do you know this stuff? Like, how do you even know this? And so I was like, maybe I am. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I found out that I was pregnant, right? And that we'd been trying and we weren't gifted with that because I was in this fear state. I was in this state of unhappiness because I saw what was real in the world and nobody else could see it. And I thought I was going a little bit crazy. Anybody have those moments where you're like, why does nobody see what I see? And so in that time, we had moved from that rock bottom moment. We had made the decision and we moved to Mexico. And as Tara has probably explained to you, and what we have come to realize is that there's a different energy. We are living on a different parallel down here. The skies are bright blue, clear, cloud free. It is just such a beautiful gift, and when I look outside, it's brighter. There's a clarity, a crispness to the view that I have here. And it brought clarity to my life that we had been making these decisions based on what was expected of us, what these values our family had raised us with, but yet didn't honor when we needed them the most. And that was really impactful. It was heartbreaking. It was awful all at once, but it was also like a rebirth. And I think that those that are happy just embrace challenge and embrace grief and pain a little bit differently, and they look for the joy. This is something that we teach our children, something that we gift them with, is that you get to decide if you're happy. You get to decide to make decisions that move you towards being happy. And I think that if we can teach our kids that and teach them how to create their own happiness, not only will they make better decisions because they're not looking to find happiness in activities or in things or in other people, but they will also come to create that environment around them as they grow up, right? And they'll strive for more, and they'll really be intentional with who they become if we honor that. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's so beautiful and so powerful. And I resonate so much with what you said, because we're back in Canada now. And that's why I'm wearing a sweater. I had the heater on a moment ago. It's so chilly here. But I agree with you, that crispness that you're talking about and the light, that's what we feel when we do, because we're 6 and 6. So 6 months in Mexico, 6 months in Canada for now. Gabriel would probably prefer 8 months in Mexico, 4 months in Canada. And so we're here and it's beautiful and I love it. And yet at the same time, there is a difference in the energy. So I can echo that 100%. And I feel like it's really important for people to start making decisions now that really are not only in alignment with the lifestyle that we want, but for the energetics of what we want. Because if you want to create the most exceptional, beautiful life, I call it the heaven on earth experience. I mean, you could create it, I suppose, in a really dense environment. It might take a lot more energy and a lot more oomph to get yourself up and going every moment, or you can move to certain places around the world, which takes courage and freedom to be able to do that. But you can move to different parts of the world that actually are already conducive to this sort of energy that Christina and I are talking about, where you actually could wake up and look out your window and feel happy. You could actually have that as a natural thing, as opposed to it's another day, it's another thing, I'm doing the routine, I'm getting up. It's like that same monotonous living, which Christina and I were just saying how grateful we are before we hit record here, that we have so many amazing people that we connect to, that we're so grateful that we get to have these incredible conversations in our day-to-day life and in our work. But again, that takes courage to be able to move outside the norm, do things a little bit differently. And that is what you have done as well. It takes a lot of courage to say, you know what? This life here and what we have, which could have been beautiful and most likely was in many ways, you knew and you had that inner call that there was something new, there was something expansive that was calling you, and you went through your own rebirth, which allowed you to then, have a healthy pregnancy, birth a baby, look fabulous after just a few months of having a baby, and be able to still continue. Like you were just saying, you guys have date night tonight, right? So it's like, what life are you living,
Well, isn't that it? Like we start to think about all of these things that we can create. And so often we just settle for what's comfortable. And, when you talk about that picture, it just like instantly it hit me. It's life in HD. right? You can choose to live regular life, or you can choose to live life in high definition. And that high definition is intuitively working towards what you want with intention and action. I think about the forest, and by the way, you're right. I could have had a great life. We lived in a beautiful 10-acre hobby farm, had a renovated farmhouse. We had a garden, we had an orchard. We had owls in the yard all the time and deer. And I got to tell you, I miss it. I miss those things. But I look at life in chapters. Everything is a chapter. And so that's why I don't really worry about what's next, because there are many chapters to life. And so my mom actually gave me this advice when I first met Ryan, because I thought that she was going to be quite upset with me. I met Ryan and I almost instantly knew that he was the person that I was going to marry. He was the person I wanted to have children with, after many frogs, by the way. Okay. So I was very clear on what I wanted, and he happened to be that. And so he asked me multiple times to move in with him. And I just said, no, I'm not moving in with you. I'm not moving in with you. I have my own place. And finally he goes, Christina, why? You're here every single day. You rarely go home. Why won't you just move in? And I said, because I have a bedroom set. I have a couch. I have a walk-in closet. I have a view. Right? He goes, Christina, we can use your bedroom set. We can put your couch in the living room. I will build you a walk-in closet. Now, what do you have to say? And I was like, I guess I'm moving in. So I called my mom, right? And like, Italian mama, okay? And I say, Mom, so I've decided that I'm gonna move in with Ryan 3 months into meeting him, right? And my mom goes, really? That's great. And I was like, what? I was like, I thought you were gonna be mad. I thought you were gonna tell me all the reasons that I wasn't supposed to do this, right? And this is like a very good life lesson. And I said, what do you mean? And she's like, Christina, he's such a nice guy. The way that he treats you, how you are with each other, like it's such a beautiful thing. Of course. And I was like, well, what if I'm making a mistake? I said, what if I'm making a mistake? And she goes, you move out. And I was like, oh, it's just that, right? What if we leave the country? What if I'm making a mistake? What if this is a terrible mistake? You move back, right? And this is what's happened because we had the courage to do something different. We as humans expanded. We now are in a position that is very uncomfortable. Those are the positions that you learn to grow in, right? You learn to expand in these places. You expand your mindset, you expand your vision. You have new ideas when you do something like this. And so now when my little kiddo comes up to me and goes, hey, Mom, do you think like we could live in Italy next? I'm like, yeah, I think that sounds awesome. I'm going to work on citizenship right now with my Italian heritage, And so all of these things become an option for you when you say yes. Now, it's important to also say no to the things that don't serve you, right? People that are successful, people that are happy, they say no a lot more, right? If things are not a heck yes, a hell yes, an F yeah, if they are not that, we say no. And sometimes we say no to really great things. When you become more successful and you have more alignment in your life, you say no to things that are awesome, right? I've had to say no to trips to England. I've had to say no to trips to Cancun. I've had to say no to things that are calling my soul because there were other things that were more important and that were more in alignment with what I needed to do right then, including taking care of my new son, right? My new baby. So when you start to flow in this direction and you realize that that intuition is calling you, the only thing that doesn't bring joy is by not honoring that, right? But when you honor that feeling, you honor that move forward, you honor all holistic views of your life, right? In sleep, in exercise, and in nutrition, in mindset, in growth. When you honor all of those things, everything starts to move in the right direction. New opportunities show up. Things that never would have happened before happen to you. And you're like, wow, how did this happen? Well, it's because you allowed it to come in, because you said yes time and time again to that intuitive guide. And they rewarded you for having the courage, even though it was a little scary, right? Because in life, there is always risk and little risk. People want little risk, big reward. That's not how this works. Little risk equals little reward. Big risk, big challenge on the way, big reward. And so when we can start to think and look at our life that way, and see what is the worthy reward, what is the worthy outcome, what is the worthy challenge that we're willing to go up against, things start to flow. And by the way, you can have it all. You can have the baby. You can have a big business. You can work with people that you love every day and get excited to get into your inbox, get excited to get on Zooms because you can't wait to see them. You can't wait to talk to them because you've made decisions to let go of everything that doesn't serve you and get rid of everything that you were just simply tolerating, because you get what you tolerate, right? But when you start to show up this way in life, you don't get what you want or what you ask for or what you wish, hope, pray for. You get who you are, and you learn that the journey is what you embrace. Who you're becoming in that journey is what you get to embrace and enjoy along the way. That's what life is all about. That's how you find joy, your inner peace.
Oh my gosh, I love this conversation. There's so many gems and pieces. The courage, I think, for people to just get courageous. People hold back. Everyone and I were just talking about this today. People hold back so much. They see what they want. They know what they want. It's imprinted in their heart, in their soul, and they hold back for whatever the reason is. And I'm like, time's just going to keep going. Life is just going to keep unfolding. So how long do we want to sit back and hold ourselves back? And I love that you have taken these courageous leaps and in all the different ways, because that's what's allowed such momentum and expansion to happen for you, because you're living one from your most authentic self and voice and spirit. You're fully vibrant, like so vibrant, because it's honest and it's beautiful. And because when you are living in that soul alignment place, I really believe it's like the whole of the universe surrounds us and says, yes, I'm going to give you more. I'm going to give you more beauty and more love and more grace and more happiness and more joy and more, all the things that we want, because you're choosing it, because you're standing in that. And I think it's the same thing when, having a baby, with all of the pieces that hadn't worked before, to then coming into this beautiful new aligned space, the new chapter, the new book of you and where you are, and to get pregnant and have the baby in Mexico in this whole other container. Like, what a blessing. You and I have talked about that so much, looking at the systems, right, from Mexico to Canada and birthing a baby. We've said, right, like when you're over 40, they're like, they put you in a scary box. And then, of course, us having twins, I was in a double scary box, and so there was so much pressure. Whereas getting pregnant down in Mexico, it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're over 40, fine, you're having a baby, let's have a baby, it's not a big deal. But just that contrasting energy again, by you guys relocating, you really placed yourself in a space that was going to be supportive and conducive to hold the energy and hold the space for you guys to beautifully have someone new enter your world.
Oh, it is such a beautiful thing. And you know what's so funny? And I think I did tell you this story, but it was hilarious. When we first came down here, my daughter was 5, and we came down with the intention of coming for 3 to 6 months. We told her we were coming for a couple of weeks because it didn't really matter to her at 5, right? And so after a couple of weeks goes by, we say, hey, Izzy, we're going to stay till Christmas. So we'll stay for, a couple of months. And then we said, then we're going to stay till your birthday in March, right? And so we just kind of kept pushing it down the line, and she was fine with it. She gets to go to the pool every day, go to the beach. She was having a great life, right? And then one day she said, Mom, I really want to go back to Canada. And I said, oh, honey, why do you want to go back to Canada? Let's talk about it. And I thought she was going to say because she missed her cousins. She missed her grandparents. She missed her friends. And she said, Mom, I really want to have a baby. I really want you to have a baby. I want us to have a baby. And I want a sibling. Okay. This is by like Vocal Child, who, by the way, manifests everything. Okay. And so I'm like, okay, well, I said, honey, we don't have to go back to Canada for that. We can have a baby right here. Like, we can have a baby in Mexico. And the look on her face, she was just like dumbfounded. She's like, no, we cannot. And I was just like, oh, why? What do you mean? Why can't we have a baby here? Mom, we won't be able to understand it. She thought we were going to have a little Mexican baby. She thought we were going to have a little Mexican Spanish-speaking baby. Okay?
My God, that's hilarious.
Isn't that the cutest thing ever?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And the innocence of it, right? Like thinking the baby's going to come out fully speaking Spanish. That was like a friend of mine. She has a daughter who's very, very innocent and childlike. And she had some developmental things, but she's very innocent. And when she saw the twins, the first thing she asked were, it was so cute. Well, what clothes were they wearing when they were born? And we're like, what? And she's like, well, what outfits did they come here with? And we're like, naked? Like there was this conception, right? That they came fully clothed, right? We laughed so hard. But it's like the innocence, right? Oh my gosh. So sweet though.
It's so sweet.
And I was going to say, your daughter's so happy, like just seeing the photos and she's like a little mama.
She is a little mama, and we knew she would be. That is her baby, by the way. You just ask her. It's her baby. And we also woke up, and I know that your audience will receive this in the way, like we also woke up one day and we were down here after this conversation, of course, and she realized we could have a baby here. We woke up and she was writing names at the table. She was writing different names down, a whole page of girl names and a whole page of boy names. And it was the cutest because it was English name, Mexican middle name, and then our last name on all of the kids, right? My favorite was Miriam Sanchez Whiteley was one of them. Okay. So it was super cute. And I said, honey, what are you doing? She's like, well, I just thought if I wrote down a bunch of names that we could pick from this list when you have a baby. I was not pregnant. I was not pregnant for 3 months. Right. But she knew that baby was coming. And I think that so often we get to this place where we like what's comfortable. And by the way, I had a really horrible pregnancy with her in Canada. I had a terrible birth experience, even though I had a midwife at the hospital. I actually wrote a letter of complaint. It was that bad when I was in Canada. And we were, both my husband and I were traumatized. My daughter didn't breathe for her first 5.5 minutes of life. And we didn't know she was going to make it. And then we got lectured on it. And now I come to find with some education that it was probably negligence from the hospital that had that happen. So coming down here and having a baby here and having this incredibly positive experience, I like 3 days after having the baby, I was like, I think I can have another one. And I'm 40, right? And when I said I was 40, I was like kind of like tiptoeing into the doctor's office because like you said, you're a geriatric pregnancy in Canada. And I was like, but I'm kind of old. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm 39, I'll be 40 this year. And they're like, so? You have to like at least 45, 48, probably. Like this is the conversation. It's not weird down here. And I felt embraced by that. Like family is everything here. We have lost this privilege of putting family first. God, family, we've lost all of that in Canada and the US right now. It's just gone bonkers. And so coming here, we knew that we could honor family. We go out to restaurants, and while we're eating, the staff come and pick up the baby. I go to get my hair done, and there's other people that are coming and holding the baby, right? I learned from my nanny that the reason, and I told you this story actually, because we talked about the twins, right? The reason that people come up to you and they want to hold your child or they want to touch the baby is because they have a superstition that you pass on good luck. And if you don't touch the baby and pass on positive energy, that they could be cursed down here. So like everybody that sees your baby, your beautiful baby, wants to hold them and be a part of this. Whereas like in Canada, I kind of feel like we're an inconvenience to have a family and like, oh, you brought all your kids to the restaurant? Like, great.
I actually had that experience, Christina, when we lived in Barrie. The twins were, I think they were walking at this point. They must have just been walking because it was just after that situation where I was like, I'm out of here. It was kind of like the nail in the coffin sort of thing. And we went to this restaurant that I had been to hundreds of times, cute little cafe, very like small menu. Everybody knows everybody. Been there many times. And we went with the kids and we took the loft. There was like a loft area where there's only 3 tables. And I thought that's probably the best area for us to be because if the kids want to like just crawl around, walk around, they'll be fine. We were treated so poorly as, like you said, an inconvenience for walking in with children. The woman, actually, the owner, came out and was so rude to us that I had it at that point because they were complaining that our kids were too loud and they weren't crying. They were happy kids. They were laughing. Not once did the kids cry in this hour that we were there. But it was like we were an inconvenience and we were taking up too much space and we shouldn't have been up there because what if they fell down the stairs? I said, we're watching them the entire time. It's not like we're mindless parents. We're with them. There's no way. And they all knew how to climb up and down stairs anyway. So stairs weren't an issue for us at this point. But it was like one thing after the next, after the next. And I had it. And I actually went up to both the woman who was serving us and the owner. And I said, I will never come back here. And I said it loud enough so that everybody could hear, because they were looking at us and like being upset with us as if we did something wrong. And I said, this is a family-friendly establishment. I've seen other youth here. Why all of a sudden this is an issue? And I was clear. I said, I will never come back here. This is unacceptable. And I never went back. And then when you go to Mexico, a lot of the restaurants have built into their establishment play areas for children. You could be having your dinner and the kids are on the swings and they're playing right over here.
Yep.
Right? Like they really do consider family. And I love that. And I think this is part of the general unhappiness that I see in Canada and North America, is because we've lost touch with something that you just said. We've lost touch with our spirituality, connection, God, the divine, whatever people want to call it. And we haven't been putting family first.
Yep.
So our spirituality and our family are like somewhere over there. And then this striving to get ahead or trying to make ends meet or whatever it is, there's so much stress built around that the fundamental things that actually bring us so much joy are stripped away. And they come, what, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, or when we're having a hard time. So I think that's really pivotal in what you just said, because I don't know if enough people realize that if you do start making those changes and you start putting creator first and you start putting family first, then all the other things start to work in your life. Your business flows, the abundance flows, your health flows. And I think that's a piece that people are missing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's funny because there was a couple of things, there were like a couple of very funny things that made us realize like this is not for us. And you're talking about like the playgrounds. And by the way, there are playgrounds in a lot of different restaurants down here because they want to entice families. They also allow our dog to come with us, by the way. Our dog comes with us everywhere. They like at one of the restaurants that we go to all the time, like they like at one point put a blanket on a chair to put him on the chair at the table. And I was like, no.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Right? Like we got to draw a line. But there was a couple of things like we were living, and I'm talking about this because I think it's important when it comes to your happiness and joy. When you know that you've got all of these other things that are coming at you that are not your values and your belief system, then you start to feel heavy. There's a heaviness that comes, and you have to start making decisions outside of that. So one of the reasons that we moved from downtown Victoria, BC, was we had this epiphany one day when we got a bill for it was a storm drain tax. So we were now getting taxed $75 a year for rainwater runoff. We were getting taxed for rain on our property. And so Ryan and I looked at it and we're like, if we're getting taxed, I know. And guess what? It happens a lot of different places. And then people will say, well, it's the infrastructure. I'm like, no, we pay city taxes. We pay water taxes. We pay all of these taxes. Now you're going to charge me a storm drain tax. And so like Brian and I both looked at each other. That was the beginning of the end of us living in the city, because I was like, if they start charging us for this, guess what? Like nothing is off limits. So we moved out to the country. And then we would also go to this restaurant every single Sunday because they had live music, and Izzy loved the live music. She was so cute. And so one day, and she would dress up, and we never told her what to wear. There was like, sometimes there were wildly outrageous outfits that came with us. And so this time she decided that she was going to dress up in this cute little Spanish dress I got her when I traveled to Spain. It was like this little dance dress, like I won't say flamenco. I don't even know what kind of dress it was, but it was gorgeous. And so we dress up. This is the dress that she wants to wear for our Sunday afternoon. Okay. So we go to the restaurant, and the guy is singing and playing, and she's loving it. And the restaurant is full, and she stands up next to me, and she's adorable. And she's dancing to the music right next to the table. Right. And everybody's like enjoying her being adorable, and we're enjoying her. And the restaurant manager comes over and he goes, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to get your daughter to sit down. And I said, pardon me? And he said, yeah, we don't allow dancing in this establishment. It's actually like, we don't have insurance for it, and goes like on to the
that's
spiel.
Insane. No, that's insane.
I know it's insane. And then I think, am I living in bizarro world? Am I living in like, what is happening? And I said, I laughed. I'm like, you can't be serious. Like, she's 2. She's so cute. And like everyone is looking at me and they're just like, is this really happening? I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, she's going to have to sit down. She'll encourage other people to dance. And she can
oh my God. It reminds me of the Footloose movie. God forbid everybody gets up and starts dancing.
Right. That's exactly what I had in my mind. And I was just like, I looked at him and I said, I can't believe that we're having this conversation. I'm going to respect your rules right now, but I just want you to know that we will never come back. We come here every Sunday because we enjoy being here and it's supporting this business. We like the food here, we like music, but we're never coming back. And so it's funny that we both had that experience in Canada. And
then when you go to Mexico, they encourage you to get up. They love when everybody gets up and starts dancing. You can see it. And I find it such a contrast because when we were there and the kids, like all the kids in the community, they're all together and they're laughing and they're playing and they're happy and they're loud and they're just being kids and everybody's okay with it. Mm-hmm. And the moment we came back here, we noticed the contrast again. We went out to a restaurant and it was right after we had flown in. Like that day we flew in, my dad picked us up in Ottawa. We stopped at a restaurant on the way home and the kids were wanting to do the same thing. And you could see all the people in the restaurant being like, death stare, right? Shh. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, guys, like you're going to have to bring it in. And they're like, why? We didn't have to do this in Mexico. And I'm like, we're not in Mexico anymore. It's like, we're not in Kansas anymore, right?
And I'm glad that we can laugh about it.
100%. But isn't that interesting, the contrast? Because our kids are seeing and we're seeing through the eyes of our own children too, the freedom and the lack of it in other places. And I think that, and I know you have this as a core quality too, freedom is so important to me. And I think that without freedom, you can't have like authentic happiness because you would always feel like you're suffocating in a cage somewhere, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of the Rising Consciousness Show. For more high vibration conversations, meditations, energy activations, and tips and tools on creating your most exceptional life, we lovingly invite you to connect with us at academyoflight.ca. The website is www.academyoflight.ca. It is time to create your heaven on earth experience, and we look forward to sharing this beautiful journey with you.
You're listening to Rising Consciousness, yeah.
Woo!
Woo!